I mean, Douglas Murray, all he's done is really highlight an obvious fact. Cultures are different, people are different, and if we have too much of difference, there's going to be alienation, which breeds animosity, which then breeds tension, which can lead to violence. It's an obvious understanding of human behavior, and he called it out a long time ago in his work, and he's just saying, I called this out. Where's the incitement to violence? It's an obvious point.
But I also want to talk about bad actors, because there are some bad actors who are now going to use this new draconian approach to try and get very decent people jailed. And I'm going to show you an example of this. And actually, you'll love to see this anyway, because Douglas Murray, good friend of mine, absolutely brilliant commentator, very well respected, but he's bold and he's predicted for some time the types of issues that we're now seeing in the country. Well, he gave a new interview following the Southport massacre, and I'll show you what he said.
You've seen recently with things like the atrocity of this terrible young man who went and stabbed these young girls who were at the Taylor Swift dance class.
The little girls.
Just beyond belief. And the public mood is febrile. And there have been demonstrations and things that, we do not see often in Britain. The burning of police stations by very angry mobs. I just see today, a Muslim group, sort of doing a boundary policing thing in their area of chanting Allahu Akbar and defend the mosque. The worst thing for me is exactly what I said would happen. And the reason I wrote The Strange Death of Europe, and the reason I banged on about this for years beforehand, was I said it is so obvious what is going to happen. I was so angry watching it when it could have been stopped.
Yeah, it sucks to be right about something so bad.
Now, I would say very sensible interview from Douglas Murray, right? Certainly not something that I would view as inciting racial hatred or reporting anything inaccurate, which can apparently now get you arrested. But look at what Alastair Campbell had to say. Now, Alastair Campbell, of course, the man whose fake news dossier helped send the UK into an illegal war, he posted on X, "Think Met Police UK," copying them in, "might want to take a look at this book plug." So there we have Alastair Campbell now using this new draconian regime, the leadership being provided by authoritarian Starmer, Stephen Barrett, to try and get Douglas Murray arrested for saying that. So let's just be clear, this is where the left are at. They do not believe in free speech. Tell me, anything you saw there from Douglas Murray that you think could warrant the Met Police taking a look at it?
No, I didn't see anything in that clip of Douglas that was potentially crossed any relevant legal threshold. What I would say is that we do live in an age where people would rather cancel their political opponents than politely disagree with them. We do live in a rather cruel age where people seriously want to hurt other people merely for the imagined crime of daring to have a different thought. It's a very brittle, it's a very cruel age. And the way to get out of it is to get all of these terms defined. Get them all clear. Let's everybody know what incitement to violence is. And let's make it absolutely clear that we all know. And then the monsters who actually do it, fine, prosecute them. But let's not have decent people living in terror of false accusations anymore. And the only way I see that can be done is by getting definitions. I know Mayuran talked about the far right. Well, let's define that. Tell me what the far right is. Define it. Set it down. We'll have one definition and we can apply it consistently. And then we will have order, rule, and law. And that, I know I bang on about it. I know I'm a legal nerd, but I do think that only rules now can save us. Only clear, defined rules known in advance that apply to everyone equally.
Well, I guess my concern about that, though, Mayuran, is that if it is Keir Starmer and this regime setting those rules, given we've already seen in the first 4 weeks, I think where they're heading, personally, I would find that really terrifying. And, you can see from Alastair Campbell, someone who is still, I don't know why, but still given a lot of time of day in Labour circles, you can see how they are now going to try and politicise debate in order to get people arrested.
Yeah, no, it's quite shocking. I think Stephen makes a great point about precision. We need to know our boundaries. We need to know exactly what we're getting into when we get on social media, when we go about our business. Otherwise, there'll be innocent casualties. However, who is making those laws? That's the problem. And the implementation of those laws. We know, as you just kind of mentioned, the Hope Not Hate leader of that guy, Nick Lowles, we know that it's going one way. This law is going to operate one way, and that's the problem. If there is somebody inciting violence to Nigel Farage, you can imagine the police are going to do nothing. We know the police are going to do nothing. We know that there'll be no condemnation. They'll be saying, well, Nigel, he kind of deserves it. He's stoked up hatred. What do you expect? All of this rhetoric is going to start to come out. So it's not just the fact that it's laws. It's not just the fact that it's very poorly defined and no one knows where they stand. It's the fact that it's only one way, and we know that. I mean, Douglas Murray, all he's done is really highlight an obvious fact. Cultures are different. People are different, and if we have too much of difference, there's going to be alienation, which breeds animosity, which then breeds tension, which can lead to violence. It's an obvious understanding of human behavior, and he called it out a long time ago in his work, and he's just saying, I called this out. Where's the incitement to violence? It's an obvious point.
Indeed, and as you say, if you do talk about two-tier policing, then you've actually got to make certain that it exists. Well, I think we've seen lots of evidence of that. Mayuran talks about Nick Lowles. Absolutely. If the 55-year-old housewife in Cheshire is arrested, then Nick Lowles should be arrested too. He won't be. But then you also have the case of Manchester Airport, where we saw with our own eyes two Muslim men beating up police officers. They have not been charged. Well, the police minister, Dame Diana Johnson, was pushed quite a lot on this in a car crash interview with Nick Ferrari on LVC. Watch.
Why do we still don't have any idea of what might happen with those involved in the incident at Manchester Airport on the 23rd of July? What's taking so long there?
Well, that's obviously a matter for Greater Manchester Police to decide what action to take. Sorry, I missed that.
As are some of these matters, Dame Diana. So they can move at pace here. We've now have video evidence of an assault that appears to take place, but involving a number of police officers and a number of young males. It's the 23rd of July. We've more than 2 weeks. Why the delay on that case?
Well, as I say, that is a matter for the police in terms of whether they are going to charge. I know that case is being worked on as we speak.
But Dame
I
Diana,
also
as
know
Minister,
there's the...
how concerned are you? Because you rightly point to the speed with which the courts have moved here. And I think that's played a part, by the way, in the night that this country enjoyed last night.
Yeah.
You know, we fought back. So how concerned are you that it's taking more than 2 weeks with the Manchester Airport incident?
Well, look, I want the police to be able to act swiftly. I want people arrested and brought before the courts swiftly. Clearly, we've had to deal with the disorder over the last few days, but more generally, the Labour government is absolutely committed, and the Prime Minister is absolutely committed to making sure that people feel safe in this country.
But you're not answering the question,
the rule of law is upheld, and when people commit criminal offences, they are brought to account quickly. Now, can I just say, we are a new government. We are inheriting problems with the court system and the delays.
I'm sorry, you're not inheriting the incident at Manchester Airport. I'm very sorry. No, you have inherited a lot of issues with policing.
Yes.
You're absolutely right.
Sorry, I do want to say I want them to act. I mean, I know they are looking at that case. Well, that's an operational.
Days.
So 5 times she didn't answer the question there. Stephen Barrett, what my question to you is, as a legal expert, don't you think we're now heading down a slippery slope where actually Starmer's rhetoric around the riots, which I think is clearly putting pressure on the judiciary, now opens that up in loads of different cases. Actually, maybe this Manchester airport case does need more time. Maybe it does, but you can understand why people are looking at this and thinking, well, it's an example of two-tier policing.
Well, yes. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we talked about policing being independent of politicians, and we let them get on with it. But if you start interfering as politicians, then you are immediately going to be asked, well, you interfered in this case. Why didn't you interfere in this other case? I mean, that's just obvious. It's probably one of the many reasons to keep policing independent is that you won't get bogged down in that question. I mean, there was a man who was arrested recently, I think almost entirely as the result of Twitter, because the mainstream media didn't I don't want to go into the event at all, but the mainstream media didn't cover the event. It was only on Twitter, and it was only the Met Police put out a statement saying, oh, we're aware of some upset on Twitter, therefore we're going to investigate. Now, I'm terribly sorry, Dan, but I am a stickler for rules, and that's mob rule 2. Yeah. Okay, it doesn't just because the mob just because the mob you like gets what it wants.
But Stephen,
it doesn't mean
I see it happen all the time. I see it happen all the time. The police are completely obsessed with what is being discussed on X, and you're right. It doesn't matter either side. It should matter, was actually any crime committed.
Yes, and this is my big complaint with Ofcom, because again, and all these regulators, they sit there
communists.
No one's complained. It's like, well, I don't care whether anyone's complained. Has a rule been breached or not? Yeah. Are you enforcing rules freely and fairly and impartially and consistently? But I don't care how many people complain. It's irrelevant.
And given you've raised the off-communists, by the way, can I just say, have you noticed a complete lack of hysteria in the mainstream media over 8,000 complaints made about Ed Balls interviewing his own wife, the Home Secretary, on Good Morning Britain? I think actually there's now been more complaints about that than there has about my incident with Lawrence Vox on GB News, which dominated the mainstream media for days. So I think it does show you that very often Ofcom will react to pressure from X, pressure from the mainstream media. Can we start, please, with this free speech crackdown? So Cheshire Police have in custody right now a 55-year-old woman who apologised for sending an inaccurate tweet. Stephen, that tweet very clearly said, if this is true. So she caveated what she said. Now, how is that against the law?
Well, what we're going to have to do is go back to old school principles and not talk about live cases or potentially live cases, because we have to be responsible. What I can tell you is that the Online Safety Act 2023 created a new offence in section 179. I'm looking at it now. And that new offence was sending a message when the person knows what is being said is false. And that is a new idea to our law. It's a pretty new concept to us generally. It's because it came in 2023. It's not properly fleshed out yet. So perhaps words like "if this is true" will caveat and protect potential future individuals, any of them who might be charged with this, who knows, let the law work itself out. But it is a new type of offence created in 2023. The burden is on the prosecution to prove that you knew that the information was false. Actually, my greater concern, Dan, is the PR put out by the CPS and the government around this, because it hasn't been very helpful. And you know, I'm a constitutional nerd, and I bang on about the Constitution. And I'm very, very dull. Well, the Constitution has a fundamental principle that mistake of law is no defense. So if you're ignorant of the law, yahoo, sucks to you, you're still guilty. You were ignorant of the law. But there's a corresponding duty that goes with that. That there is a burden on the government, on the state, to explain the law and make the law clear. And I don't believe that any of the recent PR by the CPS or by the government has made the law clear. In fact, I think it's made it opaque. I think it's got people genuinely, most people are decent, Dan. They don't want to commit crimes. So they see a sort of message from the government or the CPS and they go, oh, well, I don't want to tweet, inaccurate things. I'd hate to. And it's not just that they fear reprisal. It's actually that they're morally good. Okay, we're not all morally evil people who only do good things because of the threat of force against us. Most people are just fundamentally decent. And most decent people will be rather scared by the PR put out by the CPS and by other government agencies that just inaccuracy will somehow lead you into
I feel this is the same sort of propaganda campaign being run by the state that we saw during COVID, where very normal activity started to be criminalized, or even if it wasn't criminalized, they put the fear of God in us, whether it be leaving the house or standing within 6 feet of someone. But Mayuran, what do you make of all of this? Because there's only been 4 weeks, right, of this Labour government, but clearly there is no getting around the fact that they are cracking down on free speech. Free speech no longer exists in the same way in the UK as it does in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say is the Conservatives have managed decline of the country, but Labour are actively pursuing decline of this country. That's what it feels like. I used to think Keir Starmer was just this kind of not very intelligent, not a great orator type person, but I realise he's less of a statesman and more of an algorithm. He just kind of operates, he just kind of moves. And he's predictable, he's boring, but it's a dangerous algorithm because it's an algorithm that is very authoritarian, and that's what we're seeing in real time. So we're seeing potentially an expansion of the term Islamophobia. We're looking at university campuses now where we're getting a crackdown on free speech, and now the kind of freedom on the internet with Twitter is quite astounding. And we often use the word Orwellian, we've read Animal Farm, but I actually think really, literally, we are seeing this play out in real time, and it's quite astonishing. And I think people now are going to be self-censoring. I mean, people are already scared to talk about mass immigration, culture integration, Islam and things like that because they don't want to cause anyone offense because they're decent people, but there are issues there. This is another avenue where they're going to self-censor even on social media, and that's going to stifle the debate. So we've witnessed two-tier policing with you have a Midlands police officer who's openly saying how he talks to community leaders for two-tier policing, saying you can have a bespoke service effectively. You've got the BBC who is not impartial. We know we can't get a full comprehensive range of opinions on say things like multiculturalism and so on. We have a voting system that doesn't really allow us major change. And we have politicians that just clamp down on one side of the debate all the time. So we are really in a very perilous situation where, freedom of speech, an Orwellian state is coming our way. And it's very frightening.
It is. And the most crazy thing is, by the way, it doesn't actually change the fundamental problems. All you're actually going to do is push all of these issues underground. You're going to make the people who already feel ignored much, much angrier. And so I think what this will do in the long term is actually exacerbate tensions, which is really worrying, given I would say tensions are already very high. You know, I only talk about products on this show that I use and that I love. This one's a little bit more personal, but the fellas watching will completely get it. And the ladies would do very well to treat their husband or boyfriend because this is a game changer. Let me tell you, men want grooming to be a one and done deal. So the days of using the same trimmer for your face and your privates are over thanks to our friends at Manscaped. They've come up with the ultimate package to keep your hairs trimmed. It is called the Beard and Balls Bundle, and it features the Lawnmower 5.0 and the Beard Hedger. It's not the traditional sort of lawnmower, but believe me, the product will get you trimmed as freshly as cut grass. Yes, one for the moneymaker, another for the boys downstairs. The trimmer gets it right the first time. It's gentle on the skin and all your delicate places, and with 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, you can choose between a precise trim or a smooth finish. It's also waterproof, which means you can trim in the shower, which is really handy. Next, I want to tell you about the Beard Trimmer. So whether you're going for a neat stubble or a full-on lumberjack look, this one has you totally covered. It features a titanium-coated stainless steel T-blade, 20 length options, and what I love is you can change depending on what style you want, using the brilliant zoom wheel. Also waterproof, which means you can handle your beard grooming in the sink or shower without worrying about water damage. It has 60 minutes of runtime and an LED charge indicator too, so you will never be caught mid-trim with a dead battery. This is genuinely such a gentle product. No more cuts. You'll keep your loved one happy. And actually using this product increases your confidence too. The great news is today you can get 20% off and free shipping if you use the code Outspoken at manscaped.com. That's 20% and free shipping, www.manscaped.com. No more juggling multiple tools or dealing with subpar results, just efficient, effective grooming wherever you need it for the premium grooming experience. Trust Manscaped. Mayuran and Stephen are standing by because they're going to be back in just a moment with news on why Sadiq Khan now says he feels unsafe in the city in which he is the mayor. Is he telling porcupines or does he have a point? We will debate. But first, and actually I think Stephen and Myron are going to be very interested in this one. You know, I only talk about products on this show that I use and that I love. This one's a little bit more personal, but the fellas watching will completely get it. And the ladies would do very well to treat their husband or boyfriend because this is a game changer. Let me tell you, men want grooming to be a one and done deal. So the days of using the same trimmer for your face and your privates are over thanks to our friends at Manscaped. They've come up with the ultimate package to keep your hairs trimmed. It is called the Beard and Balls Bundle, and it features the Lawnmower 5.0 and the Beard Hedger. It's not the traditional sort of lawnmower, but believe me, the product will get you trimmed as freshly as cut grass. Yes, one for the moneymaker, another for the boys downstairs. The trimmer gets it right the first time. It's gentle on the skin and all your delicate places, and with 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, you can choose between a precise trim or a smooth finish. It's also waterproof, which means you can trim in the shower, which is really handy. Next, I want to tell you about the beard trimmer. So whether you're going for a neat stubble or a full-on lumberjack look, this one has you totally covered. It features a titanium-coated stainless steel T-blade, 20 length options, and what I love is you can change, depending on what style you want, using the brilliant zoom wheel. Also waterproof, which means you can handle your beard grooming in the sink or shower without worrying about water damage. It has 60 minutes of runtime and an LED charge indicator too, so you will never be caught mid-trim with a dead battery. This is genuinely such a gentle product. No more cuts. You'll keep your loved one happy. And actually using this product increases your confidence too. The great news is today you can get 20% off and free shipping if you use the code Outspoken at manscaped.com. That's 20% and free shipping, www.manscaped.com. No more juggling multiple tools or dealing with subpar results, just efficient, effective grooming wherever you need it for the premium grooming experience. Trust Manscaped. But now, back to the show and the return of my superstar panel. And I'm back. And I'm back now with Stephen, Barrett and Mayuran Senthilnathan. And Myuran, I want to talk about you for a moment because, wow, you have gone totally viral all over the internet. 2 million views on X alone for your video that really summed up why it's wrong to simply dismiss folk who might be concerned about what's happening in this country, who might be concerned about mass immigration, who might even have concerns about Islam and the introduction of Sharia law through the back door in this country. So let me play you a little part in case you haven't seen this, although a lot of people clearly have, and Myuran will discuss off the back.
And it is not far right to be concerned about 750,000 people net coming into the country every year. It is not far right to value your culture and community and point out there are some towns and cities that are no longer recognizable. It is not far right to acknowledge that many cultures in this country are different, and some of these cultures have ideals and etiquettes which are not in line with British values, especially when it comes to women. It is not far right to point out that there are certain doctrines in Islam which are at odds with British principles, especially when it comes to things like gay rights and freedom of speech. It is not far right to feel a deep sense of injustice at illegal migrant men getting put up in lush hotels when you can barely afford to heat your home. It is not far right to feel a sense of injustice when you've been waiting for social housing and find that nearly half the stock in your area has been taken up by people who have recently come into the country. It is not far right to point out, as we've seen in the recent protests, that the police enforce harsher measures when dealing with white protesters because of the optics of dealing with ethnic minorities. The thing is, the moment you label someone far right, they are suddenly written off as evil people who deserve no voice. They become dehumanized, and this just makes them want to take even more extreme, reprehensible measures. And it is...
Wow. What a brilliant moment that was. Can completely see why it's gone viral. What's the reaction been, Mayuran?
Overwhelmingly positive. I mean, a couple of people kind of saying you're a token. You're a token brown man for the cause. I was using this in the Reform campaign when I was out in the streets. I had a lot of support, a lot of people whispering in my ear saying, I'm going to vote for you and it's going to be fantastic and you're a great party and everything else. But you do get the odd comment of, you're a coconut, you're trying to serve your colonial masters, that kind of thing. So those comments are there a little, but I would say they are actually a tiny percentage. The overwhelming, I would go and say 80, 90% were just, yeah, you summarized what I've been thinking all along. You've just put it very succinctly, bullseye, all that kind of stuff. So it was very encouraging overall.
Do you find it difficult sometimes, though, as someone who is non-white, to talk about these issues?
Not at all. I don't really see myself as an ethnic minority, as brown skin. When I talk to you, Dan, I don't see myself as a brown man talking to a white man. I genuinely don't see that, because a lot of people, they think that they see some ethnic minorities see themselves, say, as a Sri Lankan Tamil who happens to be in the UK. I'm not a Sri Lankan Tamil who happens to be in the UK. I'm a British Sri Lankan Tamil, which means this history is my history. This culture is my culture. The veterans who took a bullet on D-Day took a bullet for my freedoms. So this is my land. I'm not somebody walking in this country with a visa in my back pocket looking to leave at some point. This is my country. So I don't see myself as an outsider in any way, shape or form. So when I talk about borders, migration, integration, I do it because I want this country to prosper and I want a cohesive society. And so that's got, it's irrelevant to me about the color of my skin, my ethnicity and religion and so on. And a lot of people say to me, oh, your parents came here, so you should want, and so why are you against immigration? As if the implication should be, I should be for open borders because I'm an ethnic minority, which is ridiculous. My parents came here when immigration was in the tens of thousands in the late 70s, early 80s. Integration worked well. Yes, there was racism here and there, but we've moved on since then. But integration worked really well. We are now getting to 750,000 per year. It's out of control. This is a social experiment. And now we're starting to see the cracks and the splinters of this social experiment. And I just want to call it out because I care about my country.
Firstly, I find that so inspiring, and I love the fact that you are signing up to what Nigel Farage actually spoke about during the election campaign, because it's a philosophy that I have always signed up to ever since I was a little child. I totally believe in a colourblind society. I never thought about my friends based on what their ethnicity was, and I find it really sad now that in this new anti-racist movement that apparently makes you racist. Well, actually, no, I want a colourblind society. What I think is really interesting, though, Stephen, from a legal perspective about Mayuran's video, is that based on these new laws that Labour are intending to introduce in terms of coming up with a definition of Islamophobia, does that mean that even having a discussion like that, talking about why you might be concerned about Islam, could actually become illegal?
Well, let me be a little bit of a grumpy lawyer at Mayuran, because his video kept talking about what far right isn't, and it didn't talk about what far right is. And I want to know what it is. I genuinely want to know, because I like quite a lot of people, and this is a political position, so I probably shouldn't have it, but there we are. I don't want to be far right. So tell me what it is, and then I'll know how to avoid it. The idea that we can't define things and then somehow they can apply in our society just gives a lot of power to the person who's pointing the finger and screaming. And they're able to call things far right without the burden of defining the term. And I think we really must define the term.
Yeah, I do know what you're saying, but Mayuran, I wonder if we're actually going to go on a bit of a journey with this far-right term over the next few months. A bit like the one that you will have both seen happen with the term TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminist, because to begin with, that term was considered really awful. If you were a TERF, you were a terrible person. No one wanted to be called a TERF. It meant that you were transphobic. Actually, when we saw the trans lobby overreach to such a crazy extent, you had folk like J.K. Rowling, Julie Bindel, Graham Linehan, who actually say, no, I'm proudly a TERF, actually. And I wonder if we're going to see that happen with the far right too. And that's why, Mayuran, I think there's so much overreach going on from the media, from politicians, because if you call everything far right, as you made the point, actually, we're just going to say, okay, well, I viewed myself as a centrist a few years ago. My views haven't changed. If you want to define that as far right, then fine. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the term far right, there's a lot of people on Twitter now actually saying, I am far right, just kind of admitting it. I've seen a lot of posts just sort of saying, you know, I throw their hands up in the air and they just say, I'm far right, just call me far right. And I think what's happening is a hyperinflation of words to the point of meaninglessness, right? And that's come to the point of racism, you're racist, you're Islamophobe, you're a bigot, now you're far right. These words just don't mean anything anymore. And I think this is a kind of almost a convulsive response by the state and by the media class to kind of get control of the situation, clamp down on rhetoric and freedom of speech. Because one thing that is symptomatic of someone who's entrenched in toxic left-wing politics is that they're in an ideological prison. And when reality collides with their ideological universe, they want to shut it down. So they come up with cheap buzzwords, and they use these buzzwords to shut down the debate, to conquer the debate, instead of actually investigating the nuances and the subtleties and the complexities of the issue. They want to shut it down. And that's what you see from Keir Starmer. That's why I call him an algorithm. He just operates and he just shuts down. He doesn't want to engage because it's too messy. It's too dirty for them. And their ideological universe, where they feel so great, so virtuous, that will collapse in the face of acknowledging what reality is, what's actually playing out.
Well, I think another one of those people is Sadiq Khan. He's on the front page of the Daily Telegraph today, saying that he no longer feels safe as a Muslim. And he's also done a new interview with Channel 4 News. Watch this.
Indeed. People aspiring to be leaders of political parties like to blame the other. Easiest thing to do when you've got a horrific tragedy of 3 young girls, beautiful kids, being murdered, to see that being used to propagate these messages of hatred, just I find astonishing. But you see people actually, you know, buying into that. And I'm afraid we've got to make sure we say no to that and stand up to that and challenge those sorts of views.
But Mayuran, isn't he the one politicizing it by saying, if you talk about the politics around this, which they clearly are, then you're a sicko?
Look, I understand if Muslims feel fearful, you've got bricks thrown at mosques and so on, and, you know, I can understand that sentiment. I can understand how Jews would feel fearful during the marches.
Which they have done, yeah.
In London. I'd understand how people in London, who Sadiq Khan presides over, feel fearful when knife crimes go up 20% from the end of last year. You had Alex Phillips often talking about how she feels as a white young lady walking in London, how she feels unsafe. So everybody's feeling unsafe, and that's the first thing that Sadiq Khan needs to understand. But he doesn't have his finger on the pulse. Well, none of the Labour Party do. They don't want to understand that there is this horrific tragedy that's happened, and it sparked off something inside of people. And there is a backdrop of working class white people feeling alienated, and this grotesque crime, it has really tapped into something at a subconscious level, and it sparks some off. And maybe it's not entirely rational. Maybe it's not entirely rational. But at the end of the day, you can't deny the emotions of how people are feeling. Even Donna Jones, I don't know if you remember that statement.
Yes,
there was a lady,
yes.
She made a statement not long after the riots. Police Chief Commissioner, she openly said, I've spoken to the rioters. They're concerned about British sovereignty, high immigration levels, and British values being endangered. And she urged Keir Starmer to look at this. It was then retracted. It was then deleted. I'm guessing she was forced to retract
she was
it by
slammed.
superior powers.
She was
and that
slammed.
shows you what's going on here. An honest police officer having a finger on the pulse and telling you what the deal is, and then getting shut down.
Yeah, Stephen, that was interesting, wasn't it? She's a police and crime commissioner, I think, and
Yes.
it was awful to see the reaction to her. I've had her on my GB News show, and she's a really good woman. And actually, it was one of those cases where she's expressing the view that I would believe would be shared by a majority of Brits, well over 50% actually, yet she is treated like some sort of pariah on social media and in the mainstream media.
Well, it's this point that Myron came to, which is that there is a war on truth. Some people
Yes.
don't like truth, and they have a hysterical reaction to truth. And it's just not, it's fundamentally not helpful as a society to have that. I mean, our society is based on Aristotelian principles, and we really need to have a proper grown-up relationship with truth. We can't just deny it. It doesn't work. On the mayor, on Sadiq Khan, I mean, just a constitutional point, he is the police and crime commissioner. So Myron's right. I mean, I felt unsafe in London recently.
Me too.
Many of us have felt unsafe in London
I've
recently.
been mugged twice since
Mr.
Khan's
Khan, well,
been mayor.
Well, exactly. Well, it's your job, Sadiq, to
Yeah.
make sure that we all...
Exactly. It's
feel
not because
safe.
you're Muslim that you feel unsafe. Actually, virtually every single citizen in London feels unsafe for some particular reason. How can he not see that that's an indictment on himself? But instead, he wants to try and turn it around. Sorry, Myron, you come in.
Sorry, Dan, one quick point. Keir Starmer, the police, they can just do two things. They can condemn the violence outright and still just a sentence, just to say, look, we understand that tensions are rising. We understand that there are underlying issues. We will address them, but law and order must prevail. Violence must be stopped at any cost, and we must enforce the law, right? There is no excuse for violence. You can do both. You can do both. And Keir Starmer has refused to do both.
He's
just
refused
gone
point
on one
blank.
end.
He's refused point blank any time someone has tried to actually address issues with him. Point blank, he's refused to do it this week. He is acting like an authoritarian leader. Look, two bits of fun because it's a Friday. We need to be uplifted. It's been a hard week. This really made me laugh. It was a bit of an I told you so moment. Rishi Sunak looking happy as Larry with his very, very rich wife out there at a Michelin-starred restaurant in California. Stephen, apparently a mushroom pizza will set you back £32 at this restaurant. It's not that I have any issue with his wealth, Stephen, but it's that he never really wanted to be Prime Minister, did he? And look at the state that he's left us in.
Well, I can't comment on politics and politicians. He is still the leader, His Majesty's leader of the opposition, so he still has a role to perform in our
and he's
constitution.
not here.
Well, Parliament's not sitting, so they are all entitled to go away. I mean, again, I'd like a consistent rule about whether they go away or not, because, you know, Nigel got piled in on for going to the US, and then Angela Rayner went off somewhere else. And inconsistent application of rules. If we're going to have rules, let's apply them consistently.
Well, look, he doesn't even really want the job. I get that. I mean, Myron, I would have an issue if Starmer decides to go off on holiday at the end of the week. I can't believe that after 4 weeks as Prime Minister, he feels like he needs a holiday. I mean, I've just launched this show 4 weeks ago. I launched it the day after the election. It would be a dereliction of duty to my audience, to my viewers, if I went off on holiday now. He's the Prime Minister of this country, and the country is in chaos.
Yeah, I mean, his opening, his first speech was the fact that he's here to serve the people. And that's quite an honourable thing to say. And I appreciate him saying that. But if you're here to serve the people and the country's burning, you need to be here and you need to be making decisions. And look, fair enough, he has been doing that. He's been chairing Cobra meetings, so give him credit where credit's due. As far as Rishi Sunak goes, I think if I met Rishi Sunak in the pub or in a restaurant somewhere, I think he'd be a thoroughly nice guy. I think he's a really polite, nice guy. I just think that he carries the vibe of a primary school teacher more than a statesman. And I think I wonder whether his heart was fully into a vision of the country with strong conviction. It seemed like his meteoric rise, his quick rise was just something that he wanted to do, and now he's done it. He's moving on, perhaps. Let's see. We don't know. I think he said he wanted to stay as an MP, but I don't know.
Yeah. Take it off on the CV. I imagine he's going to be spending a lot of time in California. I want to just end now with the brilliant Andrew Lawrence. I'm not sure if you two follow him, but he's so funny. He's pretty much the best comedian around on X. And I was very tickled by the insight that his comedy provided into the counter marches that took place this week.
But man, what an absolutely top night of anti-racism, just legendary. All the best people were there, the good guys, the air was thick with the smell of hummus and body odour, and not one single far-right bigot turned up to riot. Absolute cowards. They saw videos of us on social media standing strong in our Hope Not Hate t-shirts, wrapped in our keffirs, and they thought, no thanks, I'm not risking that. I start messing with those anti-racist, non-binary vegan street militia, I'm going to get my arse handed to me. They didn't even turn up. At one point a pigeon aggressively flew over our heads and we knew straight away it had been sent by Yaxley Lennon, so we simply chanted, "Off our streets, Nazi scum," and it pathetically flapped its racist wings and flew away. And I think that's when we knew we had won. For a moment there was an eerie silence, and if you listened carefully it was almost as if you could hear Hitler crying in hell. One day my mixed-race gender-fluid grandchildren will ask me, "What did you do during the race riots of 2024, Grandpa?" And I'll tell them how I stood up to the racists, and then we'll all take our shoes off and head into the mosque together. But man, what...
He's good, isn't he? You've got to admit. You've got to admit.
He's very good. I wonder how long someone like him is going to survive on X, the way things are going. That's my concern.
Yeah. Well, when's he going to be arrested? Arrested for comedy. That will be next. You're already being arrested for free speech. But look, what a brilliant panel to take in what has been a shocking week. I actually think a really shocking week. Perfect combination. We get the legal expertise from Stephen, and my goodness, Myuran, we need you in Parliament next time around. Absolutely brilliant to have you both, and I hope you will return to Outspoken very soon.
Thanks, Dan. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Have a great weekend. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please do subscribe if you want lots more clips and interviews like that. Plus, if you want to watch our totally uncensored after show, then visit www.outspoken.live.